Hi, this is a beginner video and I will explain to you the most important settings for Dynostand for racing and CarX. You can just copy these values and they will work for pretty much every car. So you can just copy these values and use them, and then you can go back on the track. You don't have to worry much that you fucked up somewhere. So yeah, let's hop into the Dynostand. First things first, we're gonna reset all values. On computer you do it with G. You would have to look what key it is on the controller. So let's reset all parameters. I already did that, but let's do it again. Good. And let's start. In a suspension, you don't want to change much. The standard suspension settings aren't great, but they're good enough. For a beginner, they're good enough, and they will work. So one of the things you have to do, though, is the anti-roll bar. So some cars, for example, have a standard setting of 0. This is not gonna work. You have to have some sort of anti-roll bar. The front anti-roll bar gives you more grip at the back, so you want, which is what you want, especially with a car like this, which has rear-wheel drive. So let's set this, for example, to 20. This should work. And you also need rear anti-roll bar, which increases the grip on the front, so you get it around the corners better. But you don't want to increase it like this. You don't want to have values that are too high. So, for example, a setting like this should work for pretty much every car. One thing I like to do is I set the rear camber to 0, like this, and the front camber between 0 and -5. It should never be positive, never. It should always be negative or 0. Oopsie. And yeah, so that's that. But -4 or something like that works great. Good, this was the suspension setting. You don't have to touch any of the other settings here. Let's go into wheels. The most important setting obviously is adhesion, 120. And you can actually just now go into transmission, but I will show you one thing. So for example, some cars have low diameter values. You can always increase them to like 20. Should work on every single car in the game that I know. But for example, if you're racing on Milton, you can increase it to 21 or 22 depending on the car. You don't want to play around too much with the width. One thing, it's important to have a smaller width at the front than at the back. So this is how wide your tire is. But you need to have a lower value to get around the corners, otherwise the car will push too much over the front wheel. You don't want that. So you have to have a smaller value here. But you also don't want to increase the values too much. For example, if you set them to max, your car is starting to flip and it will lose stability. So you don't want that either. So you can just use the standard settings or increase them by like a little bit. Tire pressure is fine. The front wheel track and back wheel track, this doesn't matter too much. I would recommend just leave it at 0. It's good. It's good enough. It's not going to give you more. Well, it's going to give you style if you increase it, but it's not going to make your car drive any better. If you increase it too much, it's going to make your car drive worse. Even though it doesn't make a lot of sense at the first time you think about it, but trust me, like you can just experiment with it. But I would do it, I would leave it at 0. Tire profile, yeah, this is on preference, but you can have it between like 25 to 35 depending on the track. But 30, a setting of 30, should always work for every car and every track. Good, let's go into transmission. You don't want to play around too much here. You don't want to touch anything here as a beginner. One thing you can do is you can play around with this value a little bit. For example, you want to have it at maximum for drifting, because this will lock both wheels together, so they will spin out together faster. But you don't want to set it to 0 for racing either, because then one wheel, like if you're getting out of corners, if you're accelerating out of corners, what will happen is that one wheel will spin, so you need to have some value here. Usually every car has a value between, I think, 15 and 30, and you can just leave it at that. That's good. Of course, transmission type sequential. Good, let's go into the last setting, section brakes. You want to, of course, have ABS enabled. You want to have a front brake bias of around at least more than 50%, because when you're braking, what happens is that because of the laws of physics, more of the weight distribution will move to the front, so you need more front brake bias to even out that. So what you can do is you can always just put it to 60. That works for every car. So, or like it works good enough for every car. Some cars, for example, I have it to 70. Some cars I only have it 55 or something like that, but 60 should work for every car. Good. Brake torque. This determines how hard you brake. So how much how much power you have when you brake. When you have too much, your car you will the wheels will start to lock, especially in corners, and you will lose traction. So what I recommend is like 8,500 should work for pretty much every car. Like a value that's, like at the top range, but somewhere down here. It doesn't matter too much which specific number it is. Yeah. Then we save these settings, and then we go into mods, and we see we have a very fast car here. I don't see this car on Milton track or any other tracks, but trust me, this car is very fast, and you can win a lot of races with it. So yeah, I hope you learned something from this video. As I said, you can just copy these values, and yeah, see you online on the track. Peace, thanks for watching.